I'm leaving the marriage. I've already moved most of my things into the guest house at the club. The lawyers will have the papers delivered by the 27th.
Julian, why are you standing there like you've seen a ghost? Come and greet your new stepmother.
The moment Arthur slid that heavy emerald-cut diamond onto my finger, I didn't look at him. I looked directly into the eyes of his son, my ex-husband, Julian, and I watched as his face went from a smug, self-assured tan to a ghostly, translucent white. He looked like he was about to lose his lunch right there on the hand-woven Persian rug of his father's private estate. Julian's mouth was hanging open, just enough for me to see the slight tremor in his bottom lip. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Julian, Arthur's father's voice boomed, deep and resonant, the kind of voice that commanded empires and silenced boardrooms. Why are you standing there like you've seen a ghost? Come and greet your new stepmother. The silence that followed was so thick that he could have carved it with a steak knife. I just stood there, draped in ivory silk that cost more than Julian's first 3 cars combined, and I offered him a slow, deliberate smile. I wasn't the broken woman he had left in the snow 364 days ago. I was the woman who had just inherited his future. But to understand how we got to this moment of absolute bone-chilling karma, you have to understand the level of cruelty Julian was capable of. You have to see the way he looked at me exactly 1 year ago. It was Christmas morning. The air in our penthouse smelled like expensive pine needles and cinnamon rolls that I had spent all morning baking. I remember the lights, that crisp winter sun reflecting off the silver ornaments on the tree. I was wearing a ridiculously oversized sweater, holding on to 2 mugs of coffee, thinking about a small velvet box I'd hidden under the closet for him. Julian was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the city. He wasn't wearing his pajamas. He was in a tailored charcoal suit.
Julian, the rolls are almost done. Are we doing gifts before or after breakfast?
He didn't turn around. His voice was cold, as if it had been cured in the wind outside. I'm leaving, Grace. I laughed, a small, confused sound. Leaving? To your dad's? I thought we were going to do that by 2. No, he said, finally turning. His eyes were flat. I'm leaving the marriage. I've already moved most of my things into the guest house at the club. The lawyers will have the papers delivered by the 27th. The mug on the table seemed to vibrate. I felt the blood drain from my extremities, leaving my fingers numb. What? Julian, it's Christmas. What are you talking about? He sighed an irritated, sharp sound, like I was a difficult employee he was finally firing.
Look, Grace, let's not do the theatrics. You were a great starter wife. You were supportive when I was fighting with the old man. You kept the house nice.
But let's be honest, you don't fit the life I'm moving into now. I'm the heir to the sterling fortune. I need someone who matches that stature.
I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Starter wife? We've been together for 4 years, Julian. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat while you were finding yourself during your sabbatical. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe his father had given him as a peace offering a month prior. And I'm grateful for that, truly. But I've met someone else. Someone who understands the weight of my name. Vanessa is, well, a Davenport. Our family owns half of the shipping lanes in Europe. It just makes sense. He walked past me towards the door. He didn't even look at the coffee. He didn't even look at the tree. Wait! I choked out, my voice cracking. You're dumping me on Christmas morning? For a Davenport? You're kicking me out of our home? He paused at the door, his hand on the handle. Technically, it's my home. My trust fund paid the lease. I left you $5,000 in the joint account. That should be enough to get you a decent apartment in the suburbs. Please be out by tonight. I'm bringing Vanessa over here later for drinks. The door clicked shut. I stood in that silent, expensive penthouse, the smell of burning cinnamon rolls beginning to fill the air. I realized then that I hadn't just lost a husband. I'd been discarded like a piece of outdated software. Julian didn't see me as a human being. He saw me as a placeholder. The weeks that followed were a blur of cheap motels and the kind of soul-crushing silence that comes with when you realize that your entire life was built on a lie. I moved into a tiny, damp studio apartment in the edge of the city, my $5,000 parting gift. It was mostly eaten up by the security deposits and legal fees just to make sure he didn't sue me for thefts of the jewelry he bought me for my birthdays. I spent nights staring at the ceiling, analyzing every law of dark psychology I'd ever read about. Julian had used them all on me. Law 11, gaslighting, making me believe my needs were too much for his high-pressure life. Law 3, creating dependency, making sure I quit my career to support his vision. I was a victim for a while, and I stayed one. But then, I saw the headline in the business section of the digital paper. Arthur Sterling and son Julian at odds over Davenport merger. Julian wasn't the powerhouse he pretended to be. He was a puppet. And his father, Arthur Sterling, the man Julian had spent his entire years describing as a cold-hearted monster, was the one pulling the strings. Julian was terrified of him. Julian spent his entire life trying to earn Arthur's respect and failing miserably. A thought began to grow in the back of my mind. It was dark. It was risky. It was Law 21. Play the long game. I didn't need to get even with Julian. I needed to become the one person Julian had to obey. I spent my last few $100s on a high-end tailored blazers and a blowout. I knew Arthur Sterling's routine because Julian used to complain about it every Sunday. Arthur took his tea at 4 p.m. at a Gilded Oak private club, so exclusive that the waiters had to sign NDAs just to serve the scones. I didn't try to sneak in. I didn't try to be a seductress. I knew Arthur Sterling was a man who valued one thing above all else: competence. I walked up to the concierge and handed him a folder.
Give this to Mr. Sterling. Tell him it's the independent audit of the Davenport shipping lanes that his son failed to include in the merger proposal.
I had spent 3 nights in the public library, using my old research skills to dig up the debts hidden in Vanessa's Davenport family's holding. Julian was too blinded by her last name to see that the Davenports were sinking. 10 minutes later, I was sitting across the most intimidating man I had ever met, Arthur Sterling. He had a silver hair, eyes like a chipped flint, and a presence that made the air in the room feel pressurized. "Who are you?" he asked, not looking up from the folder. "My name is Grace. I used to be married to your son." Arthur finally looked up. He looked intrigued. "The starter wife," Julian mentioned. "He said you were simple." I didn't flinch. Julian wouldn't know the truth if it bit him, Mr. Sterling. He's about to merge your empire with the family that has $18 billion in offshore liabilities. I'm not here as an ex-wife. I'm here as a consultant who doesn't want to see a great man's legacy destroyed by a mediocre man's ego. Arthur leaned back. A small, dangerous smile touched his lips. "Sit down, Grace. Tell me about the Davenports." Over the next 6 months, the experience of my life shifted. I didn't become Arthur's mistress. I became his shadow. I was his lead analyst, working from a private office in his skyscrapers. We spent late nights deconstructing corporate takeovers and drinking 20-year-old scotch. I realized Arthur wasn't a monster Julian had described. He was just a man who was profoundly lonely and surrounded by yes men, and a son who was a disappointment. Arthur saw my mind. He saw the way I could thin slice a person's intentions within seconds of meeting them. One night, after we had successfully blocked the Davenport's merger, leaving Vanessa's family in financial ruins and Julian in a state of professional disgrace, Arthur turns to me. "Julian is a fool," Arthur said softly. "He had a lioness by his side and treated her like a house cat. He doesn't deserve the Sterling name." "He's your son, Arthur," I replied. "He's a liability," Arthur snapped, and his voice softened. "Grace, I'm 62 years old. My doctors tell me my heart isn't what it used to be. I need someone I can trust to hold this empire together while I'm gone. Someone who isn't motivated by greed, but by something deeper." He looked at me then, and for the first time, I didn't see a billionaire. I saw a man who was tired of being underestimated by his own blood. "Marry me," he said. I felt the ghost of Julian's laughter on Christmas morning. I felt the cold of that studio apartment. "Is this for protection, Arthur? Or for love?" I asked. "It's for legacy," he said. "And because I think, in our own way, we're the only 2 people in this city who actually understands the cost of power." I took his hand. "Under one condition," I whispered. "The reveal happens at the annual Sterling Gala. I want Julian to see the exact moment his inheritance changes hands." Which finally brings us back to the rug, to the emerald-cut diamond, to the white face of my ex-husband. The gala was held in a grand ballroom of the Sterling estate. 500 of the most powerful people in the world were there, sipping champagne and talking in hushed tones about the mystery woman Arthur had been seen with. Julian was there, of course. He was standing by the bar, looking disheveled. Vanessa had left him in the moment the Davenport's merger fell through. She didn't date failures. He was trying to work in the room, trying to reclaim his status as a golden boy. He saw us walking down the grand staircase. I watched him from across the room. I saw the moment he recognized me. I saw the glass of champagne slip from his hands and shatter on the marble floor. He pushed through the crowd, his face twisted in a mix of rage and utter confusion. "Grace, what the hell are you doing here? Who let you in?" Arthur stepped forward, placing a protective hand on the small of my back. "Watch your tone, Julian. You're speaking to the new CEO of Sterling International." Julian let out a frantic, ugly laugh.
CEO? Dad, you've lost it. She's a nobody. She's the girl I dumped because she wasn't good enough for us. Tell her to leave before I have security throw her out.
Arthur's face turned into stone, the leader archetype in full effect. I didn't lose anything, Julian. I found the only person in this family with a brain. We were married this morning. Grace is now my wife, your stepmother, and the primary beneficiary of my will. Julian's eyes went wide. He looked at me, then at the ring, then back at his father. You married her? To spite me? No, Julian, I said, my voice calm, melodic, and terrifyingly steady. I didn't marry him to spite you. I married him because he's 10 times the man you'll ever be, and because unlike you, he knows that you would never underestimate the woman who helped you build your world. I stepped closer to him, so close I could smell the desperate scent of gin on his breath. Oh, and Julian? About that starter wife comment? I leaned in and whispered into his ear, the same way he had whispered his breakup to me. The suburbs were a bit damp, so I decided to move into the main house. You'll find your things in the guest cottage at the club. Arthur has decided to revoke your access to the Sterling name. You have $5,000 in your account, and that should get you a decent apartment in the suburbs. Julian tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Security stepped forward, men who had been on my payroll for months now, and quietly escorted him towards the door. The room erupted into whispers. The emotional justice was palpable. The crowd didn't see a scandal, they saw a restoration of balance. Arthur looked at me, squeezing my hand. Shall we dance, Mrs. Sterling? I'd love to, Arthur, I said. As we moved into the dance floor, I looked out the window at the falling snow. It was Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year later. The roles had reversed. The scapegoat was now the queen, and as I rested my head on Arthur's shoulder, I realized the most important lesson of all. The best revenge isn't just by winning, it's becoming the person who decides who else gets to win. I didn't just marry a billionaire, I became the empire. And Julian was finally right about one thing. I didn't fit into his life. I was far too big for it.